and welcome to Mrs. Pam Reads. Today we are continuing in our story, Zoo by James Patterson and Michael Ledwidge. We will be starting today in Book 1, Chapter 11. And in our last video, Oz was going to Botswana because someone there that he works with has witnessed a terribly gruesome, apparently, lion attack. And I will say, you may have noticed if you've been following already, but if we get to really gruesome, I'm probably going to skip some of that. As well as if we get to a sex scene, I'm probably going to skip some of that too, depending on how graphic it gets. All right, so we are in chapter 11. It was early summer. The morning light illuminated the crushed Marlboro boxes and Happy Meal cups in the roadside weeds. Terrific. I just started my amazing journey and I was already lost in the wilds of Queens. Staring out from the back of my sticky JFK-bound taxi, I cursed as we slowed to a dead stop. Again. We lurched forward a bit and then stopped again. The cabbie bashed the horn and spat out a string of curses, went back to talking to somebody on his headset. Sounded like he was talking business. He was very dark and matchstick skinny, a lot of red in his eyes. Above the dash, I could see that the LIE had become a frozen, curving conveyor belt of red brake lights. It was so bad, even the so-and-sos on the shoulder trying to cut people off were jammed to a halt. Surrounded by my bulky camera case, laptop, and carry-on, I checked the time on my iPhone for the 500th time. It was looking like making my 9:05 a.m. flight to Africa was going to need divine intervention in order to happen. I also noticed an email from Natalie and made the mistake of opening it. You don't have to do this. I sighed. Maybe my girlfriend was right. Maybe this was nuts. Wouldn't it make more sense to head out to the Hamptons with her instead? Get some sand in my shoes, eat some oysters. I could certainly use a Long Island iced tea or 10, not to mention a tan. Couldn't this trip wait? No, I knew full well it couldn't. I was committed to this thing, far past the point of no return. Hamptons or no Hamptons, HAC was happening. Right here, right now, right frigging everywhere. I could feel it in my pores. I went through my travel kit again. I sorted through my passport, my insurance, my federally mandated less than 3-ounce travel toiletries, my skivvies, t-shirts and shorts, my red wool hat. Then I scooped up my anti-malaria doxycycline pills that had spilled over my folded up poncho until everything was wired tight. To hell with naysayers. I was good to go. Botswana or bust. The last thing to do was print out my e-ticket when I got to the airport, if I ever got there. When we finally started moving, I took out a map of Africa. I was 46 mix of nervous, excited. I've never heard that phrase. Just the sheer size of Africa, 3 times as big as Europe. I had learned so much about the continent during my first trip when I was still in grad school But this is different. This was no field trip. The cabbie quit nattering into his Bluetooth and turned to me. Which terminal, sir? The airport was finally beginning to crawl into sight. I'm not sure, I said. My flight's on South African Airways. You're going to Africa? South Africa? Asked the cabbie. I've been preoccupied. Now I noticed the guy looked and sounded African himself. His voice had a melodic lilt of African English, Nigerian maybe. Botswana, I said. You go from New York to Botswana? No. For real? The cabbie said, his red eyes wide in the rear view. He seemed even more skeptical than my girlfriend. I was getting nothing but unbridled support and good omens from all corners tonight. That's the idea, I said, as we pulled up in front of a bustling terminal. Well, I hope it is a business trip, he said as he printed my receipt from the meter. You make damn sure is a business trip, Mon. You know what I mean? I did know what he meant, unfortunately. He was referring to Botswana's AIDS epidemic, the second worst in the world. 1 out of every 4 adults in the country was supposed to have the dreaded sexually transmitted disease. I wasn't too worried about it. Between my long trip and dealing head-on with the frightening global epidemic, I didn't think I'd have much time to squeeze in any sex. Besides, I had a girlfriend. Don't worry, I told the cabbie as I opened the door. I won't have any fun at all. Chapter 12. About 4 hours later, I woke up 30,000 feet above the Atlantic. Blinking in the low, lonely roar of the 747's cabin, I raised my seat and looked out the window beside me. Through spaces in the milky floor of dim clouds, I could see the silver squiggles of the surf of the ocean far below. It definitely wasn't in Kansas anymore, or Queens, thank God. I yawned, unlocked, and lowered my seat back tray and worried my laptop out of my carry-on bag. I was going to write some emails, but instead I found myself clicking open the file for the HAC PowerPoint presentation I'd shown in Paris. It began with a photograph of a primitive painting from the famous Lascaux caves in France that clearly showed a guy being killed by a bison. Next was Rubens' chained Prometheus. In the painting, the torment in the upside-down Titan's face is pretty damn visceral as an eagle tears into his, well, viscera. The Rubens was followed quickly by Nicolas Poussin's haunting Renaissance painting, The Plague at Ashdod, depicting a scene in which God has sent a plague of disease and mice onto the Philistines for disobeying him. Next came stranger, darker, lesser-known images. I felt my pulse skip a little when an ancient sculpture of a reclining jaguar appeared. It was found in an Aztec temple along with an apocalyptic prophecy of animals devouring all humanity. The jaguar was followed by an eerie illustration from the Toggenburg Bible. It shows a man and a woman dying of bubonic plague. There's something about its bright, static flatness, a characteristic of medieval art, that makes it particularly disturbing. The naked figures lie stiffly in bed like paper dolls, their pale bodies polka-dotted with protruding buboes. The Black Death, which killed 40% of the known world's population, had been started by meremoths and carried through Europe by rats. I looked out the window again. As I stared out at the clouds thousands of feet below me, the ocean below that had a strange sensation. It was a sinking, chilling feeling. For a moment, hurtling 600 miles an hour toward Africa, I felt suddenly very tiny and very alone. I wasn't religious, but as I sat there, I started wondering about the inexplicable nature of these things. It was as though I could actually feel I can't even say the word is drawn. I'm drawing a blank. Apocalypse. Apocalyptic, there we go. Feel the apocalyptic shift that was occurring. Isn't that funny? I just said that word a couple minutes ago. I thought of horses, birds, snakes. I thought of the curse God put on the snake in Genesis. He will crush your head, and you will crush his heel. You will strike. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel. The wrath of God? Or maybe it was just my jet lag, I thought, rubbing the gunk out of my eyes. There was no doubt that I'd become obsessed with HAC. Guess we could just start calling it hack, since I say it so often, hack. I thought about all the sleepless nights, the quitting school, and now I was actually on a plane to Africa. Maybe I would finally find the answers I was looking for. Or maybe I was delusional. I was beginning to doubt my own sanity. I glanced down at my laptop and saw that I had another email from Natalie. This one was a real picker-upper. Oz, I know this is probably a bad time to say this. Oh boy, I knew what was coming. I almost quit reading then and there. The same way I looked at my bank statement in those days. Just flicked my eyes over it, knowing I don't want to see it. Anyway, I read the rest quickly. But I've been thinking about everything, and I guess the bottom line, I just can't do this anymore. At least not now. I just got back my immunology midterm. I flunked it. I'll be lucky if I get a C now. It's not just that. I'm distracted, and I have to concentrate on school and my career. I know I shouldn't email all this. We'll talk when you get back, and you need to get someone else to check on Attila. Oh, I'm too swamped. Okay, then, I thought. Whoopee. I'm back on the market. I considered replying to her email, but then decided just to ignore it. Just leave things alone. I couldn't turn back now. Natalie knew that, and I knew Natalie's priority was to become a doctor. She'd always been clear about that. Maybe we did need a break. I just have to call the other woman in my life. I left a message for Mrs. Abreu on her machine, begging her to feed Attila for me until I came back. She wouldn't let me down. I closed my laptop and stretched. I had 12 hours to go before reaching Johannesburg for my stopover. I reached into my laptop bag for my iPod, put in my earbuds, cranked up some Black Sabbath, and headed down the aisle of the speeding plane in search of the stewardess and some Red Bull. And that is where we're going to stop. It's actually the end of book 1. We will start book 2 in our next video. Very interesting look into people's thoughts and lives and all that. I do want to remind you, because I noticed that I haven't been saying it, but if you have not subscribed to the channel, and I noticed that most viewers are not subscribed. So if you like what you're seeing, even with my mistakes, if you would subscribe and click the bell button, you'll get a notification every time a new video posts. So I do aim for about every 3 days. So books don't take too long to get through and we can get on to a new one. Anyway, all right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day and I will see you next time.